The voice in your head is one of the most powerful forces in your life. It is always there, guiding your thoughts, shaping your emotions, and influencing your decisions. Many people underestimate how much this inner dialogue affects their future. But the truth is that the words you repeatedly say to yourself quietly build the direction of your life. From the moment you wake up in the morning, your mind begins a conversation with itself. Sometimes it tells you that you are capable and ready for a day. Other times it fills your head with doubt, fear, and hesitation. These silent messages slowly influence how you approach challenges and opportunities. When the voice inside your head constantly repeats negative beliefs, it begins to limit what you think is possible. You start to believe that certain goals are too big for you, certain dreams are too far away, and certain opportunities belong only to other people. This belief slowly becomes your reality. Your brain is designed to listen. To repetition. The more often you tell yourself something, the more your mind accepts it as truth. If you repeatedly say that you are not good enough, your mind begins searching for evidence to support that belief in your daily experiences. In the same way, when you speak to yourself with encouragement and belief, your mind starts to look for ways to prove that belief correct. Suddenly, challenges feel like learning opportunities rather than threats. Obstacles become lessons instead of permanent barriers. The inner voice does not just influence how you feel, it directly shapes the actions you take. A person who constantly hears encouragement in their mind is more likely to try new things, take risks, and keep going after failure. On the other hand, someone whose inner voice is filled with criticism will hesitate before taking action. They may overthink decisions, doubt their abilities, and avoid opportunities simply because their mind has convinced them they might fail. Over time, these differences in thinking create massive differences in life outcomes. Two people with similar skills and similar opportunities can end up living completely different lives simply because of the way they talk to themselves. The voice in your head becomes a quiet leader that guides your daily behavior. It influences how you respond to pressure, how you treat mistakes, and how persistent you are when things become difficult. When that voice is supportive, it gives you the courage to continue, even when progress feels slow. It reminds you that growth takes time and that setbacks are part of every meaningful journey. When the voice is destructive, it drains your motivation and confidence. It turns temporary problems into permanent doubts and convinces you that quitting is easier than trying again. Many people never question the tone of their inner voice. They assume that the criticism they hear in their mind is simply the truth about who they are, rather than a pattern of thinking that can be changed. But the truth is that your internal dialogue is something you can reshape with awareness and intention. When you begin to notice how you speak to yourself, you gain the ability to slowly replace harsh criticism with constructive guidance. This shift does not happen overnight, but every time you choose a more supportive thought, you begin building a stronger mental foundation. Your mind gradually learns to focus on possibilities rather than limitations. As this new pattern grows stronger, it changes how you approach challenges and how you see your own potential. Confidence begins to grow not because circumstances suddenly become easier, but because your inner voice becomes more supportive. Your future is not only shaped by the opportunities around you, but also by the conversations happening within you every single day. Every thought you repeat, every belief you reinforce, and every word you whisper to yourself slowly builds the person you are becoming. Stop being your worst critic expndit in 17 paragraph and don't add any ending sentence. Many people face criticism from the outside world, but the harshest critic they will ever meet is the voice inside their own head. This internal critic speaks constantly, pointing out every mistake, every weakness, and every imperfection. At first, it may seem like this voice is trying to push you to improve. You might believe that being hard on yourself will make you stronger or more disciplined. But over time, constant self-criticism begins to weaken your confidence instead of building it. When you repeatedly criticize yourself, your mind starts to see mistakes as proof that you are not capable. Instead of learning from setbacks, you begin to fear them, and that fear slowly limits your willingness to try new things. The problem with being your own worst critic is that it turns every small failure into a personal attack. A simple mistake at work, a missed opportunity, or a slow day suddenly feels like a confirmation that you are not good enough. This kind of thinking creates unnecessary pressure in your life. Instead of focusing on progress, you start focusing on perfection, and perfection is a standard that no human can truly maintain. When people constantly judge themselves harshly, they begin to lose the motivation to keep going. The mind becomes exhausted from the constant negativity, and even small challenges begin to feel overwhelming. Imagine trying to run a race while someone stands beside you shouting that you will fail with every step you take. That is exactly what happens when your inner voice becomes a relentless critic. Progress requires patience, learning, and resilience. But when you criticize yourself too harshly, you remove the space needed for growth and improvement. Every successful person in the world has made mistakes, failed at something important, and struggled at times. The difference is that they learn from those moments instead of using them as reasons to attack themselves. When you stop being your own worst critic, you begin to treat mistakes differently. Instead of seeing them as proof of failure, you start seeing them as information that helps you improve. This shift changes the way your mind reacts to challenges. Instead of fear and hesitation, you begin to feel curiosity and determination. Self-compassion does not mean ignoring your weaknesses or pretending everything is perfect. It simply means recognizing that growth comes from understanding mistakes rather than punishing yourself for them. When you speak to yourself with patience and encouragement, your confidence slowly begins to rebuild. You start trusting your ability to learn and adapt. This new mindset creates a healthier relationship with effort and progress. You become more willing to try again after setbacks because failure no longer feels like a personal attack. The energy that was once wasted on self-criticism can now be used to focus on improvement. Action. Instead of tearing yourself down, you begin building yourself up. Your inner voice becomes less like a harsh judge and more like a supportive coach who helps you move forward. The moment you stop being your own worst critic is the moment you begin giving yourself the freedom to grow and improve. Replace self-doubt with self-leadership, EXPENDIT in 17 paragraph, and don't add any ending. Sentence self-doubt is one of the most common barriers that holds people back from reaching their potential. It appears quietly in the mind, questioning abilities, weakening confidence, and creating hesitation in moments that require courage. Many people experience self-doubt when they are about to take an important step in life. It can appear before starting a new project, speaking in front of others, or chasing a meaningful goal. The voice of doubt often asks questions that make you second-guess yourself. It whispers thoughts like, "What if you fail?" or "What if you are not ready?" These dots slowly begin to influence your decisions. When self-doubt becomes a habit, it starts controlling your actions. Instead of moving forward with confidence, you hesitate, delay, and sometimes walk away from opportunities that could change your life. This is where self-leadership becomes essential. Self-leadership means guiding your own thoughts, emotions, and decisions with clarity and responsibility. Just like a strong leader guides a team through uncertainty, you must learn to guide your mind through moments of doubt. Self-leadership begins with awareness. You start noticing the moments when doubt appears and recognize that these thoughts are not always accurate reflections of reality. Instead of allowing doubt to dominate your thinking, you begin to question it. You remind yourself that every capable person once started as a beginner and learned through experience. A person practicing self-leadership does not pretend that fear or uncertainty does not exist. They simply refuse to allow those emotions to make their decisions. This mindset shifts your focus from fear to responsibility. You begin asking yourself what action you can take instead of asking whether you are capable. Every time you take action despite doubt, you build a stronger sense of confidence. Your mind learns that progress comes from movement, not from waiting for perfect certainty. Self-leadership also requires discipline in how you speak to yourself. Instead of repeating thoughts that weaken your confidence, you begin reinforcing beliefs that support growth and learning. You tell yourself that challenges are part of the journey and that mistakes are opportunities to improve your understanding and skills. Over time, these new patterns of thinking begin to replace the old habits of doubt. Your mind slowly becomes a place of guidance rather than hesitation. The more you practice self-leadership, the more control you gain over your reactions and decisions. You begin to trust your ability to navigate uncertainty. Confidence grows not because every situation becomes easy, but because you develop the ability to lead yourself through difficulty. Replacing self-doubt with self-leadership transforms the way you approach life and the opportunities you are willing to pursue speak to. Yourself like someone you care about, expend IT in 17 paragraph, and don't add any ending sentence. Many people spend their lives encouraging others, supporting friends, and offering kind words to those they care about. Yet when it comes to themselves, their inner voice becomes harsh, critical, and unforgiving. Think about the way you speak to someone you truly care about. When they struggle or make a mistake, you usually respond with patience and understanding rather than judgment. You remind them that everyone faces challenges and that one mistake does not define their entire worth or potential. But when the same situation happens to you, the tone of your inner voice often becomes very different. Instead of kindness, your mind may fill with criticism and disappointment. You might say things to yourself that you would never say to someone you love. Words that question your abilities, your value, and your future. Over time, this pattern creates a deep imbalance in how you treat yourself compared to how you treat others. Speaking to yourself like someone you care about begins with recognizing that you deserve the same patience and understanding you offer to the people around you. It means accepting that mistakes are part of being human and that growth requires room for learning and improvement. When something goes wrong, instead of immediately criticizing yourself, take a step back and say to yourself, "I'm not perfect, and I'm going to make mistakes." You can pause and respond with the same supportive mindset you would use with a close friend. You might remind yourself that one difficult moment does not erase all the effort and progress you have made. This shift in self-talk does not mean ignoring responsibility or pretending everything is perfect. It simply means choosing encouragement over unnecessary harshness. Kind and supportive self-talk helps your mind remain calm and focused during challenges instead of becoming overwhelmed by negative emotions. When you treat yourself with compassion, you become more willing to try again after setbacks and more motivated to keep improving. Your inner voice slowly becomes a source of strength rather than a source of pressure and doubt. The relationship you build with yourself becomes healthier, more balanced, and more supportive over time. This change influences not only how you feel internally, but also how confidently you approach opportunities and challenges. Speaking to yourself with care creates an environment in your mind where growth, resilience, and confidence can develop naturally. Your mind believes the words you repeat, expend IT in 14 paragraph, and don't add any ending. Sentence your mind is constantly listening to the words you repeat to yourself every day, whether those words are positive or negative. Your brain slowly begins to accept them as truth. Many people underestimate the power of repetition in shaping their beliefs. The thoughts you repeat the most become the foundation of how you see yourself in the world around you. If you constantly tell yourself that you are not capable, your mind starts to build a belief system around that idea. Over time, it becomes harder to imagine success because your mind has already accepted failure as normal. This process happens quietly and gradually. You may not even notice it at first, but the repeated messages in your mind slowly shape your confidence and behavior. Your brain works like a filter, searching for evidence that supports the beliefs you repeat most often. When negative thoughts dominate, your mind becomes very good at finding reasons to doubt yourself. On the other hand, when you begin repeating words of belief and encouragement, your brain starts to search for proof that you are capable and improving. This is why the language you use with yourself is so important. Every sentence you repeat becomes a small instruction that your mind begins to follow. When people say things like, "I always fail," or "I'm not good enough," they unknowingly train their brain to look for situations that confirm those statements. The more those thoughts are repeated, the stronger they become. Eventually, they start influencing decisions, effort, and persistence. Changing this pattern requires conscious awareness. You have to start noticing the words you are repeating in your mind throughout the day. When you catch yourself repeating limiting beliefs, you have the opportunity to replace them with words that encourage growth and learning. Instead of reinforcing doubt, you can reinforce determination, progress, and patience with yourself. As these new thoughts are repeated over time, your brain gradually begins to accept them as the new normal. Your mindset slowly shifts because the words you repeat begin shaping a stronger and more confident belief system. Confidence begins with internal conversations, expend IT in 14 paragraph, and don't add any ending sentence. Confidence is often seen as something people either have or do not have, but in reality it is something that grows from the conversations happening inside your mind every day. The way you speak to yourself shapes how you feel about your abilities and your potential. Every person carries an inner dialogue that runs throughout the day. Internal conversation influences how you approach challenges, opportunities, and even simple daily decisions. When your inner voice is supportive and encouraging, it gives you the courage to step forward and try. You begin to believe that even if something is difficult, you are capable of learning and improving. On the other hand, when your internal conversation is filled with doubt and criticism, it slowly erodes your confidence. You start questioning your abilities before you even take action. Many people assume confidence appears only after success, but in reality, confidence often begins before any visible achievement. It starts with believing in your potential through the words you repeat to yourself. Internal conversations act like instructions to your mind. When you tell yourself that you can handle a challenge, your brain begins preparing you to take action and search for solutions. But when you constantly repeat thoughts like "I can't do this" or "I'm not ready," your mind begins to treat those words as facts and reacts with hesitation. Confidence grows stronger when your inner voice focuses on progress instead of perfection. You begin to remind yourself that improvement happens through effort and persistence. This shift in thinking allows you to face uncertainty with a calmer and more focused mindset. Instead of fearing mistakes, you begin to see them as part of the learning process. The more supportive your internal dialogue becomes, the more willing you are to take small risks and move beyond your comfort zone. Each step forward reinforces the belief that you are capable of handling challenges and adapting to new situations. Over time, these repeated experiences build a stronger sense of self-trust and resilience. Your internal conversations begin to guide your actions in a positive direction, creating momentum in both mindset and behavior. Confidence gradually becomes a natural result of the encouraging and constructive dialogue you maintain within. Your own mind progress starts with changing your inner dialogue. Expend IT in 14 paragraph and don't add any ending sentence. Progress in life rarely begins with a dramatic external change. More often, it starts quietly within the mind in the way a person speaks to themselves during everyday moments. Your inner dialogue acts like a guide that shapes how you interpret challenges, setbacks, and opportunities. The words you repeat internally influence the direction of your thoughts and actions. When your inner voice constantly focuses on limitations, it becomes difficult to move forward. Thoughts like "I can't do this" or "I will probably fail" create hesitation before you even try. These limiting conversations slowly reduce motivation and confidence. Instead of taking action, you begin to doubt your ability to make progress. Changing your inner dialogue means becoming aware of the words you are repeating to yourself throughout the day. It requires noticing when negative patterns appear and choosing a different response. Instead of reinforcing doubt, you begin replacing those thoughts with words that encourage effort and learning. Simple changes in language can shift the way your mind reacts to challenges. For example, when something feels difficult, saying "I'm learning how to handle this" creates a completely different mindset than saying "I can't handle this." Your brain responds to the meaning behind your words. When your language supports growth, your mind becomes more open to exploring solutions and trying new approaches. This shift helps reduce the fear that often stops people from taking their first step toward improvement. As your inner dialogue becomes more supportive, you begin to feel more capable of handling setbacks and uncertainty. You start focusing less on what might go wrong and more on what you can learn from the experience. Each encouraging thought becomes a small step toward building a stronger mindset. Over time, these repeated changes in self-talk have been observed. Influence your behavior, helping you take action more consistently. Progress begins to appear not because circumstances suddenly become easier, but because your inner dialogue begins supporting your effort instead of limiting it. Treat failure as feedback, not identity. Expend IT in 14 paragraph and don't add any ending sentence. Failure is often seen as a reflection of who we are, but in reality, it is simply information about what didn't work. Treating it as feedback instead of identity allows you to grow without being defined by mistakes. Many people carry failure as a label, believing that one mistake means they are incapable or unworthy. This mindset limits their potential and prevents them from taking risks in the future. When you begin to see failure as feedback, it shifts your perspective. Each setback becomes a lesson rather than a judgment about your character or abilities. Feedback provides data. It tells you what needs adjustment, what can be improved, and where to focus your energy. Identity-based thinking turns that same information into shame and self-doubt. The way you interpret failure affects your future behavior. If failure defines you, you become afraid to try again. If failure informs you, you use it to adapt and improve. Every successful person has experienced setbacks. What separates them is not the absence of failure, but the ability to learn from it without internalizing it as a personal flaw. Treating failure as feedback requires self-awareness. You must pause and ask yourself, what can I learn from this, instead of immediately saying, I am a failure. This mindset encourages experimentation. You are more willing to take risks and try new approaches because failure is no longer a threat to your identity. Learning from failure develops resilience. The more you extract lessons from setbacks, the stronger and more adaptable your mind becomes over time. Feedback-based thinking allows you to separate your actions from your self-worth. Mistakes become temporary events rather than permanent labels. It also encourages accountability. When you treat failure as information, you focus on what you can change or improve rather than blaming yourself or others. This approach builds confidence. Knowing that mistakes do not define you makes it easier to take on challenges with curiosity and determination. By reframing failure as feedback, you create a mindset that prioritizes growth, improvement, and continuous learning. Each failure becomes an opportunity to refine strategies, strengthen skills, and move closer to your goals without letting your sense of self be shaken. The way you talk to yourself defines the way you live. Expend IT in 14 paragraph, and don't add any ending sentence. The way you talk to yourself shapes more than just your thoughts. It shapes your life. Every word you repeat internally influences your decisions, your actions, and ultimately the direction you take. Internal dialogue acts as a constant guide, silently steering your mindset and behavior. The tone and content of that dialogue determine whether you approach life with confidence or hesitation. When your inner voice is critical and harsh, you begin to limit yourself. Opportunities that require risk or effort may feel too daunting to pursue. Conversely, when your self-talk is encouraging and supportive, you create a mental environment that fosters growth, resilience, and courage. You are more willing to take chances and explore new possibilities. Many people underestimate the power of the words they repeat daily. Thoughts like "I can't" or "I'm not good enough" slowly create patterns that affect how you respond to challenges. Positive self-talk, on the other hand, reinforces belief in your abilities. Phrases like "I am learning" or "I can handle this" help your mind see opportunities instead of obstacles. Your inner conversations shape habits over time. When you repeatedly speak to yourself with doubt, hesitation becomes a habit. When you speak to yourself with encouragement, confidence becomes a habit. This influence extends to your relationships and interactions with others. A confident inner dialogue helps you communicate more clearly and assertively, while negative self-talk can create anxiety and withdrawal. The way you talk to yourself also impacts your resilience in the face of setbacks. Encouraging self-talk allows you to recover faster, learn from mistakes, and keep moving forward. Self-talk determines how you perceive your environment. A mind trained in optimism and possibility sees challenges as opportunities, while a mind trained in doubt sees obstacles at every turn. Your internal dialogue also affects your emotional state. Words of support generate calmness and motivation, whereas words of criticism create stress, frustration, and fear. Every decision you make is filtered through your internal narrative. If your thoughts tell you that you are capable, you are more likely to take proactive steps toward your goals. Over time, your inner dialogue becomes a blueprint for your life. The language you use with yourself defines the standards you hold, the risks you take, and the persistence you maintain. By consciously shaping the way you speak to yourself, you begin to influence the way you live, the opportunities you seize, and the person you become.